that's what I hope to do one day with my own storytelling, is to sum things up in a way that makes it easy for someone else to understand.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's broadcast of the Jeff Heilman Project. I'm Jessica Heilman, and sitting beside me in the booth is my son, our son, Jeffrey Heilman Jr.
It's the Jeffrey Heilman podcast.
It's the Jeff's Heilman Project.
Yeah, it's the Jeffrey Heilman Project today.
Jeffrey is our oldest son. He just had a birthday. Happy birthday, Jeffrey.
I am on my own insurance plan now.
Exactly.
Things just got
lot
real.
of money from my paycheck
I
now.
stopped being able to claim him on my taxes
2
years
weeks.
ago, and he's finally no longer covered on my insurance. So there you go.
Jeffrey is the oldest of the 7. He began his homeschooling career in second grade.
After we fired his second grade teacher.
And then progressed to go through and has done some pretty amazing things, like working on the line at 17, baking from the age of 15, being on Chopped at 18, moving on into restaurant management, and just a whole slew of career choices for the last, you've done a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah, you managed. You were general manager of the #1 steakhouse in Silicon Valley.
No.
That was your title.
I was one of
I have a business card that says on it.
managers. I was nowhere near the general manager. I was one of 4 on a team that was running probably 30 front of house staff.
Yep.
And I didn't command or really have any say out in the back of house staff, but the back of house, we probably had 50 employees.
Yeah. Well, I did have to say, after talking to some of the other guys that were food runners and waiters with you when you were a food runner, about how you did as a manager after your first couple months, they were all like, we didn't really know how he's going to make the jump, and he made the jump, and he's awesome. He's one of the best managers for us to work for. So that was cool to see your peer group kind of accepting you in a leadership role when you were still basically the youngest guy there.
So for anybody watching via YouTube, we are currently sporting our puffy marine layer zip-up jackets, #marine layer, because it is cold in this garage that we are in, this podcast room. For those of you listening.
Our podcast room doesn't have space heaters.
Yes,
we don't have space heaters.
There's no heaters.
So
But
if you want to be a guest on the Jeff Heilman Project, come in the springtime.
Jeffrey helped us build this set.
Yeah, I did.
You helped us build this set, and this is your first time getting to be a part of it. Thanks for helping.
Yeah, and we had interviews.
Should have built it with some insulation.
Yeah, we've had Joseph on the podcast. We've had Madeline on the podcast.
Yep.
And
we
as
hear
we
the voice of Andrew on the podcast.
Andrew's like the moderator and the narrator for the show.
Yes.
But this show is about the humanities, bringing the humanities to entrepreneurship. So we're trying to look at this from a different angle. It's our point of view. It doesn't have to be yours, but we hope that you'll appreciate what you see here. And in looking at bringing the humanities to entrepreneurship, our jobs, our businesses that we're running, what could be more human than family? So the reason we wanted to have Jeffrey on this show this week, since he's in town visiting, how many times have you come back in the last 2 years since you moved to Washington, D.C.? I want to say 8.
So let's say it was February of last year.
That's right.
Came back in April.
Yep.
Came back in June.
Yep.
Came back in, Andrew
October.
came out to us in August.
Yep. Andrew came out to there in August.
And then
you came in October for Halloween.
October. Came
Yep.
back in December for Disneyland.
Yep.
Came back in December for Christmas.
Yep.
And then April this year, June this year, August this year, October this year. So 10 times less.
1, 2,
Does that
3,
include
4,
coming
5,
out for
6,
Grandma's?
7, 8, 9, 10.
That does not include coming out for Grandma's funeral.
In
So
January.
11 January of this year.
So the fact that you've come out, I just got to do a shout out for
Delta is
those
awesome.
who
Delta
have
has such
children
great rates.
who have moved away across the country or out of state. For you to have come back to see us for each of the kids' birthdays at least once, if not twice, for every kid's birthday, including the holidays.
Well, I thought that
it's a big deal.
since I work in retail now, restaurants, it doesn't matter, like holidays you're overstaffed for holidays, so it's fine if you like have to get time off. They just need best hands on the floor as possible, and unfortunately I have some of the best hands in work anywhere I work. So but yeah, like since I work in retail, it's hard to get holidays like Christmas, Black Friday off. And fortunately none of the kids were born during any big holidays, so
I think that it's cool, and it would be important for those who are listening to see, why did you choose to come out for birthdays over, like, you've made a strategic choice to not come out during the holidays, and I think that's cool. So
yeah, well, I think that for like growing up, obviously Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween were super big, but now that I'm an adult, it's kind of less. Like, I feel like those were the big holidays for us, and we kind of didn't do a lot for birthdays. And I don't know, I just feel like spending the entire time that I'm here with each of the kids gives them, I have more freedom to spend with them than I would if I just came back for like Christmas and Thanksgiving, because then I would be split 9 ways.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, I mean, other than you and Dad and Madeline, there are no double birthdays in the month.
Yeah, it was me and
oh well,
Ted,
Nessie
and
Joe, you and
Teddy,
Teddy,
and then Madeline.
and then Madeline and
Madeline and
Dad.
Dad.
So and me, we kind of, the three of us are kind of during that
You're within
December, January.
Capricorns.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 of us within the month, but not a month.
Wait, is Maddo?
Madeline is
Okay.
not. No, Madeline is December. So, but that's pretty cool. So, as a member of this family, as one of as the oldest of 7, I just it kind of trips me out to think that, Dad and I have been married 27 years. You're 26 years old. So like, but then the fact that Dad and I only met 3 months before we got married, that means that you've been in my life just about as long
Just about.
As Dad.
as Dad's been in my life. It's pretty interesting if you think about people who have had kids, like, especially like if somebody gets married and has kids like within the first year of being married, like that child is with them as long, like their wedding anniversary and their oldest child's birthday are like the same.
Yeah.
Just
within-
about the same
hopefully-
time frame.
Hopefully removed by a year or so, but yeah.
So you've been able to see, you've been able to be a product of being able to see going from like the apartment into the, first 3-bedroom house
What's
into
your earliest memory? Like,
you've seen the progress of what it's like to follow Dad in a startup company and go from, potatoes and rice to being able to eat out and
what do you remember?
thing.
What's your earliest memory? Do you remember Portland at all, or even Texas? Do you remember Texas?
I remember a little bit of Texas, I feel like. I remember
You're only like 2
Bud
and a half.
Mavis's house.
Yeah.
I remember little tiny fragments of Texas, and then I remember a little bit more from San Diego, and then I remember a lot from Cupertino, and then I remember most from Willow Glen in here.
So we talk a lot about applied skill, applied. You were. We raised you. We went through the home study program through school. Then in high school years, we unschooled you in the sense that you actually went into hands-on training, working at the bakery and doing an education via skills. How have you found, because I know that you're dating somebody who's like very intellectual, has a master's degree, and there have been moments where you're like, she's
school's
kind
very
of
important.
she's kind of surprised, almost, not surprised like in, wow, I didn't know this. Obviously intellectual, you can't attract what
I
you
think
aren't.
that the
So
mind-
she's intellectual, she attracted a fellow intellectual. It's just a different
Surprised that came from homeschool environment. Yeah, I think that like the mind has the capability to do a lot, and great thinkers are going to be thinking about things all the time. Doesn't matter what they're exposed to, they're just constantly going to be searching information. And so for me, that came in waves of getting interested in things and doing research on them through Google or watching YouTube videos or things like that. I was taught how to hone the ability to study and learn and eat as much knowledgeable food as I could from working at the restaurant, because they made it a point that you had to know everything about everything, and once you were done, that wasn't enough. So
You're talking about Alexander's when you had to learn all about like
menu,
the prefectures of Japan and
all the different food, why they use certain things, why we use this over that, right? And so I took that when I went to work for the clothing store, that I needed to have the knowledge of fabrics, why we use certain things, what is, if Tencel lyocell is such a great fabric, then why don't we just get rid of cotton and polyester, right? And then it's, well, if cotton and polyester aren't going anywhere, why don't we just get rid of Tencel lyocell, right? So it's just all these different things that I was encouraged to learn about, study, because it's problem solving. It's, if I'm trying to help someone find something that fits them perfectly, and they give me a reason why they don't feel like that's a good choice, then I'm going to, okay, well then what's a better option? Like, what's a better choice? If it's not this, then what else is there? And so I think that my processing power in my brain, because I'd like to go to community college and pick up some more skills. Like, I'd like to learn mechanical engineering, another language, maybe learn
Never
about
too
film.
late.
Yeah, no, because there's actually really great courses in Northern Virginia where we live, and yeah, I think that it's not a surprise, or kind of like you said, like attracts like, and I think that for her as an intellectual, just like very, very intelligent person, to find another intellectual, very intelligent person from just a field that, wasn't, homeschooling is not normal. But finding diamonds in the rough and finding people who are brilliant. I mean, there's brilliant people that come out of all sorts of environments.
Yes.
Not saying that I'm brilliant, but
Well,
I'm pretty
let's
good.
just say that if you look at a vast majority of people who are wicked smart had, shall we call it, alternative relationships with formalized education. Doesn't necessarily mean they were homeschooled.
Yeah, alternative relationships means, extracurricular activities after school.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they went to go to get an internship at a place that the school didn't have to offer, and so they
because any time that you have a generalized education, you have to tailor that message to a vast majority. And the vast majority is all levels. And so a lot of times, like you said, that even if you've gone to a traditional education, there's GATE programs, there's after-school programs, there's chess clubs, there's all those extra stuff to feed the minds of hungry learners. I had
a tough time with traditional schooling, even though I did well. I just, I wasn't interested in the stuff they wanted to teach. I wanted to look at quantitative analysis and weather patterns and architecture when I was like 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that wasn't offered until college.
They got YouTube now for that.
Now they have YouTube.
Yeah,
exactly.
YouTube, Khan Academy.
It's the homeschooling.
Yeah, I mean, so that's really cool, and I really like to see how you've been able to apply. One of the biggest questions that we have, your dad and I have, is like, how can we help with the apathy that we see? Like, how do you teach work ethic? And how do you, what I'm hearing from you, especially bringing up the Alexander's, being at one point Michelin star rated restaurant, that
Before I worked there.
Yeah, when you have the self-image, which was kind of the biggest part that your dad and I constantly with behavioral psychology and learning how to think positively, speak positively, a high self-image will typically, if you're going to raise your children in any area, raise them in their self-image to have emotional stability with a high self-image, then you can not more easy, because it wasn't hard, it was, you had to earn your position at Alexander's because it was a super
Yeah, I
high
had
caliber
worked
place.
in restaurants like for 8 years by that point.
But high caliber, it would appear, will raise your desire to want to learn in order to keep that position. And so it's almost like the higher caliber of a location, the more it fosters the desire to learn, which is going to also cure that apathy, and it's going to bring work ethic more present.
When you're training muscle, right, you will train with higher, at a higher capacity than what your body can normally take, so that it gets more accustomed to that higher capacity.
Yep.
And then once you get there, your body doesn't want to, your body's going to stop growing, and then it's going to be used to the growth, and it's going to be like, well, this isn't doing anything for me.
So if I could encourage anybody that's like looking at their kids between the ages of 12, 13, and they're concerned about work ethic and perhaps maybe they're seeing some lazy behavior, I would say if they go to that desire to where they're starting to want to learn how to, want to have a job and earn money for themselves.
I think they should find something that is more interesting to them than like an ice cream store.
Right. And what, to that point, what I was going to say was like, if they come in with the idea of, hey, Mom, I want to go work at the Gap, then I would say, why don't we, let's go to Bloomingdale's, let's go to Neiman Marcus, let's go to Nordstrom's. Like, let's look around and let's see,
why do you
not
want to
trying
work
to,
there?
yeah, exactly. I'm not trying to like put down the Gap or anything because the Gap's got great clothes.
Be better than the Gap.
I worked at the Gap.
But what I'm looking for is an environment which is going to foster the desire to want to go to the next level, to want to be your best, to present your best to society, and not allow yourself to necessarily take the easy road when you have to, whatever is going to be a little bit of a stretch. Like, what's going to be a stretch? And I see, like, it was a stretch to go to intern at the bakery. It was a stretch to be dropped off at the line at 17. It was a stretch. We even ran into the owners of the table the other day and we were like, oh, Jeffrey worked at the table for like a week. You constantly, we would challenge you with like, hey, let's think about this little bit of a stretch. But then you were really good about saying, okay, I think I can. I think I can do that stretch. I think I can make that stretch. I think I can dyno that. Yeah. I'm going to try. Tell us a little bit about rock climbing.
Well, I just started getting back into rock climbing. I've been climbing for probably like 10 years.
Free solo? Are we belaying or are we just rock climbing?
Yeah, so I've been on and off rock climbing for about 10 years. And it's kind of like a year and a half on, 2 years off kind of a thing, for mostly no reason whatsoever. Like there was one time where I like sprained my foot and then I couldn't climb for like 2 months, and then by then I like couldn't afford climbing again. So and then it was just like, again, budget, couldn't afford it. And then COVID, I couldn't go to the gym anymore, and then I couldn't pay for it once they brought the gyms back, so I was like, whatever. But yeah, I've been trying to stretch those muscles and go further than what I've ever gone. Like, I've climbing on and off for 10 years. I've pretty much always been at the same level of difficulty. And I want to, in a shorter amount of time than like a year, I want to increase what I can do. Now, granted, it has been a long time, and I have very slowly honed my craft over the years. So I have been climbing for 10 years, but it hasn't been like, for this year, I want to go from this difficulty to this difficulty. Because it's been pretty much like how it's gone the last like 2 or 3 times I've come back to climbing. I've come back, gotten to the place that I was when I left, and then I stayed there for like the year that I climbed.
You look at the jobs that you've had. I was making a list here because I think it'd be interesting. The folks that tend to watch this podcast are basically 25 to 35-year-olds. So if they're 25, they're your age, right? And most of them are not homeschooled, and most of them are, in the same situation that you're trying to figure out what their career is going to be, at least the next couple of steps. And you've had some pretty interesting career moves. So I would love, and then if you're a parent, if you're 35 and you've got kids that are 8 or 7, right? Just starting to get into where they're going to school and learning stuff. They're thinking about, how can I help my kid get to be 25 and on their own, right?
Managing.
So yeah, managing or just making enough to, I think the white elephant in the room for most parents is, how can I help my kids get enough education so that they don't starve to death after I kick them out of the house in their mid-20s? Right, so they're not living at home doing failure to launch. Let's go through just like a quick rapid fire. I'll ask you a question for the job, and you tell me what your biggest takeaway from it was, or maybe something. Just
this is
first
good
thing
because
that
I
comes to
feel
mind.
like every opportunity that I have had, right, like nobody who has put in their 10,000 hours, like nobody has done that and not done a bunch of things to help and not picked something up from each of those things.
I totally agree.
Even if it was working at some place for a month, right?
Yeah. So if we go just kind of stream of consciousness here of at your 20, you just turned 26 this week or week and a half ago. If you go with the name of the company that you worked for as the trigger, and then you just let us know what your first thing that comes to mind as far as like what you've gained from that or how it helped kind of increase or rounded out the aesthetic that you live your life by today.
Hey everybody, this is Jessica. I'm so excited to offer to you this new service and this ability that you have to text in your questions, comments. Maybe you have some situations that you'd love for Jeff and Jessica to try to tackle along with you. You can text us now at 203-646-1472. Your phone carrier may have standard rates that apply, it being a text, but this is a free service from us to you in which we would like to participate with you in an ongoing conversation about how we can help and what we can possibly do for you. Looking forward to hearing from you soon.
First one, flower.
Patience and social skills.
Okay. Being unchopped.
Handling failure.
Handling failure. Gotcha. And understanding that not all failure is
Yeah.
your fault, right? A lot of it's
I was on TV.
environmental.
It's scripted.
Exactly. Working in the Asian fusion restaurant, M Lounge.
I don't know, just
Chef
pick
Don.
up a bunch of stuff wherever you're at. Like I learned a bunch of cooking techniques that I use today that I just never dropped, like putting things together and like when to add certain things. Just like, I don't know, I picked up a bunch of like things that I use in my everyday, and I learned less working with people and more about the food itself and like how to manage time. There you go. Time management for that one.
Very good.
Time management was a big one.
Chef
Yeah, you were on the line, right?
Because
It's on the line opening night at 17.
It wasn't opening night. I was there a couple of days before they opened. I didn't work the opening, but I did work in the prep and on the line eventually.
Oh, gotcha.
But time management, learning, chicken's going to take 3 minutes, fish is going to take 10. I got to start the fish before I can cook the chicken, right? A flowing stream of things, and learning how to like multitask and do a bunch of things, prioritize certain things over others.
How about being a general manager, not the
Manager.
Alexander's?
That's not a general manager. I was a manager. There was a general manager.
I have a business
and that
card
was redeemed.
with your name on it that said
Pull
general
it out.
manager.
It says manager.
Okay, so manager at Alexander's.
Alexander's as a manager.
Okay.
You missed a couple actually.
I missed a couple?
Yeah, you missed a lot.
Oh.
Willow Street.
Oh yeah, that's
Well,
right.
I had that next
Okay.
on the list, and then I didn't put the table because you were there like a week. But
keep your people happy. Do as much as you can. You're not always going to be able to make people happy, but do as much as you can, and haters are going to hate, so you just got to, do the best job you can, do what you know how, try not to explain yourself, because unhappy people are going to try to stay unhappy, I guess. There's just, not much you can do for them.
A lot of that job was like service, customer service related, right? Like you were having to deal with.
Yeah, but the customer service stuff was real easy. And
oh,
if you
so
know,
you're talking about employee relationships.
Just make, try and keep your people happy.
That's good advice.
The best job you can.
Next is waiting tables at Willow Street, even though that's not in proper order.
Keep your clients happy. Like, do whatever you can to make sure that the pacing is right. And that they're, if you're not like gonna be there with them for 5 minutes, let them know, hey, I'll be back in a couple minutes.
Tables or something. I'll be right back.
Just do whatever you got to do to keep people happy. Keep your clients happy.
What about pivoting from food service to retail with Marine Layer?
I went from managing the restaurant to working at Marine Layer part-time. And I had taken a lot of experience, a lot of training in how to learn about what your product is. As a Japanese steakhouse, the restaurant had a very wide range of products, and they all came from all over the world. Yeah. Right.
Plus, you had a really high profile clientele with pro hockey players, pro football players.
You just
celebrities.
Have to make sure that you know what your product is, and then taking the very well-kept profile and having a very professional demeanor into a place where it's a part-time job. And of the clothing stores that are laid back, Marine Layer was the most laid back that was available. So there was a lot of very chill kind of demeanor, and going from, one side of the, it's catering towards this type of clientele,
right,
versus catering towards this type of clientele. It was a very strange switch, because I had these skills that I developed in learning things and nothing really to learn, because it's just clothes. And so I applied that towards, like, okay, what are the fabrics that we use? Okay, how do I take this format that I have for a sequence of service and apply it to not having a format? And so going from, basically it was a template for sequence of service, how to apply this template of excellence to something that has no template, because that's the nature of what it's meant to be. Is it's meant to not have a template. It's meant to be something new and revitalized. It's meant to be not like any shopping experience, but how do I apply a template to it anyway?
Right. Well, and that you bring up a really interesting point, and I've seen in courses that I've taken in content creation, like, where in the world do we get this idea that having a templatized approach to doing something should not apply to content creation?
Should not apply to everything.
It should apply to anything, right? And people who are required to write, whether it's copywriting or column work for publications, or people that do podcasts or videos, they have templates for everything. Yeah. They've got standard operating procedures for everything that they do. Now, it may not necessarily be documented, but Casey Neistat's going to have a process to building a video.
If you look at Mr. Beast's original videos where he was just doing the 3-minute format where he's just playing Call of Duty and he's doing a voiceover over his 3-minute video, that's a format. That's a format that he had.
Sure, absolutely. And that standard operating procedure grows when you have something as large as the Squid Game mock-up
contest,
that he did.
Yeah,
the contest that he did. You can't have 60 cameras shooting 3 days worth of video, edited all from different angles down to 17 minutes without a process in order to
Right.
manage your 100+ employees that need to be done.
Yeah.
Not to mention the 400 contestants that were part of something like that. So to think that a process would make somebody less creative, I think it's the opposite. I think you can build a format and a structure that triggers your mind to be creative
And I
in
think that's
certain ways
what
and do it predictably.
we were talking to Teddy
Yeah.
about earlier, which is like, you can have talented individuals, especially young talented individuals. Like, did you hear about the kid that is 14 and he animated a whole 3-minute sequence in the new Spider-Man film? 14.
Wow.
He animated on his dad's computer this sequence where it was like a shot-for-shot remake of the original cartoon.
That was done
Miles
by a
Morales
kid. I remember
Spider-Man.
that.
The Lego trailer
Wow.
mock-up, where it's shot-for-shot remake of the trailer, but it's in Lego, was done by a 14-year-old kid.
14-year-old kid. Yeah.
And then he did, the team saw what he did, gave him like a 3-minute clip in the new movie. And he was so thrilled. His dad went out and bought him a better computer so that he could render it, right?
Sure.
And so you can have these talented individuals, but if they're not taught how to structure craft, right? They can just,
Interesting comment coming from a
it was-
homeschooled, unschooled kid,
Well,
by the way.
this was
Very
the
cool.
resolve that Jeffrey and I were talking about with Teddy at the cafe. It's interesting because I don't know that anybody, kids or adults, really like to come to the acceptance that they need to be taught. So the word
right.
teach
especially
ends up,
talented individuals.
the word teach ends up becoming like a bad word, like a cuss word, especially to entrepreneurs. So we boiled it down and we took it down to the basics with Teddy and we said coach. We
Right.
said coachable. Every person, Tom Hanks, best actor, wins for Philadelphia, back-to-back wins Forrest Gump, Philadelphia. Tom Hanks has a coach. Tiger Woods wins, PGA tournament after PGA tournament, best celebrated golfer in the world, has a coach. What we're looking for is we're looking to not be alone in this world because even as an entrepreneur, even as a homeschooled kid, you may initially rebel or reject the idea of a teacher because you want to be able to say, I'm a professional, I'm really good, I'm that. And there needs to be almost this level of egotism that gets us over the hump of the fear of going and doing these things for the first time and standing up and being counted and doing all this crazy stuff. But when we can boil it down to being able to say, coached, who's your coach? Who's your mentor? Who's coming alongside you and partnering with you in your endeavors? Then Teddy, the light bulb was like, oh yeah, absolutely. I could be coached. I want to be coached. But when you take the vernacular and you start talking in terms of education or teaching, it's almost like they kind of feel like they lose a bit of that individuality because I think teaching means I got to do something just like somebody else.
Yeah.
I want to be coached like the traditional definition of teacher, which is to reach in and pull out of the person,
Right.
which has been lost over the translation. And we failed to translate that properly into teaching means I got to do something like somebody else, and I just don't want that.
Yeah. And
But
Coach Don was a great coach for you in the
Yeah,
restaurant
he was
business. He was great.
Yeah.
Redeem.
So was Redeem.
Was a great coach for you at Alexander's.
Jeffrey Daw, who was the gentleman that brought me on to my current position, was a great coach because he had worked for lots of very big brands.
Yeah.
Retail brands. And I asked him lots of questions. One of the questions I asked him was, what's a good habit that you picked up that came from an unlikely source? And he said there was one brand that he worked with. I can't remember what it was, but he worked with them and they had a lot of international clients. And something as simple as handing the bag to them with two hands is just, it speaks all languages, all clients internationally understand that as the gesture of
respect
and presenting. It's just the best way to do it.
Another thing that we had you do quite a bit of growing up was books. So I'd love to hear like your top 3 book recommendations.
As far as books I read when I was little,
Just like lifetime.
Overall?
I mean, we hope that we've encouraged you to want to read books. I know that you really like Audible books now as you've gotten older.
Yeah, Audible counts.
But
I'll do a mix of both. It depends. If the format is more instructive, I'll probably choose a book rather than the audiobook. And if it's a narration, if it's a autobiography,
like
I'll
Ralph
probably rather
Macchio
go
and
with
the Karate Kid.
Did you do
audiobook
Ralph
format.
Macchio's autobiography?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is that autobiography or regular biography?
That's an autobiography.
It's an autobiography.
Oh, my gosh,
Yeah.
Daniel.
But yeah, top books. Talent Code was very, very interesting to me. I think that there was a lot in there to be found. That just like I loved his explanations about how the mind works, and I loved his analogies. And it was just like something I kind of recommend to a lot of people. And there's a couple of books that are a little bit more of my niche personality.
Your judo one. Your language.
Verbal Judo was a really good book. Just very, very interesting stories and interesting presentation of the way that the mind and body respond to human speech. But I would say like The Road Back to You, the book on Enneagrams, is like stunning because I've never been a big like personality quiz
Strengths finder
type of like
personality. Yeah.
you know, astrology is silly in principle, right? But it has some logistical validity to it. I just think that the where you were born, what time you're born, doesn't really affect. I think that there are other factors that affect your personality, like this the concept of the Enneagram, which is basically how you as an individual respond to X, respond to trauma, respond to success, right? And it's all based on psychology of where you were when something happened when you were a kid. You know, you experienced something traumatic, or you just over time, lots of people did something a certain way and it caused you to react to it later on down the line. Very, very fascinating. So I'd recommend the Enneagram book, of course, to anyone. But then there was another book that I kind of munched on a lot over a course of a period of time, which was Rudolf Steiner's book, How to Know Higher Worlds. And it's this book that presents the idea of the spiritual realm and how to witness and communicate with and impart of it. And there's a lot of great nuggets aside from the mystical aspects of the book. Like he talks initially about one is not ready to receive knowledge unless he first respects the knowledge. And so that's like the concept of people who do not believe in anything more than, you know, physical world, would be more open to having a conversation or listening to a lecture if they first respected the possibility of there being. Yeah. Right. And it's applicable to anything, right? You know, a great baker is only going to get so far on his own merit until he respects the people that are instructing him, right? You know, Gordon Ramsay has a large reputation. If Gordon Ramsay offered to teach you cooking class, you would absolutely want to ask questions and learn from him, right? Because you respect where the knowledge is coming from.
That's right.
And I think that whenever there's dissidence between like teaching, students, whatever, it's due to a lack of respect, either lack of respect presented or a lack of respect received.
So I'm curious because we talk a lot, especially as entrepreneurs, about freedom and basically more or less absolute freedom. I mean, you kids do not have any required textbooks. You don't have any required deadlines. We've attempted to be very creative. Huh?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, well, that was requirement.
That's
How
the
to
only
Win Friends and
required
Influence
textbook
People.
we have, I think.
But my question is, I was recently talking to another 20-something, and they were saying how they are now, they're kind of in limbo. They're of this age where they're trying to decipher what they want. They're in a position to where they've been given more or less absolute freedom, and they're actually finding that they're really craving and really needing structure, even if it means structure from a boss telling them what to do. I know sometimes in this age, in the 20-somethings, people get into relationships to where their significant other is telling them what to do. It's like falling back into this pattern of needing to find structure, and to the point to where if you don't create your own structure, you're going to end up finding yourself submitting your will to another's structure just so that you can have some form of structure. And so my question, I guess, to both of you, Jeff from the entrepreneurial standpoint, Jeffrey from the homeschooled and been raised in this total absolute freedom, now going out on your own, was it difficult for you, or what did you end up having to come to when it came to structure? Did you find yourself wanting jobs that had a lot of structure? Did you find yourself able to sit alone and think and be like, okay, I'm going to map out my day. This is going to be my structure. Or are you able to happily live just this, absolute freedom, don't know what we're going to do tomorrow, don't care type lifestyle? How are you finding that?
That's a great question.
How are you finding the navigating of, I'm no longer at home on my own, and I'm recognizing that I need structure? Are you able to do that for yourself, or have you found trips or tools in order to help you do that?
I think that I have found recently I can have a tendency to I am pretty detailed in what I want and what I see, and I see a lot of things. I notice when details are amiss, something's sticking out, there's a chip in the paint. I notice things like that. And when I am not in a good, just mental state, or I'm distracted, or I'm just it's fine, it doesn't really bother me, even though it does. That's when I start to look towards other sources of structure. Either it's somebody telling me what to do at work, or whatever. Just I tend to let other people make decisions for me when I'm not in a good
tired, when you're tired, or
either I'm tired, or I am just trying really hard not to think about something because thinking about it would be awkward or uncomfortable for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I've been working really hard on trying to just sit for a minute and think about it, even if it's a little weird, or because I'm analytical and I think of actions, consequences, reactions. I think of all those things.
Talk to us about what Batman has done for you. What it represents.
So I love storytelling. I love writing. I love when you're able to convey emotion in a story. If I told you a story of a little boy who goes into the store with his mom, and he, is running all around. He's jumping around. He's looking at things. Mommy, can I get this? Mommy, can I get that? Mommy, can I get this? Mommy, can I get that? And then he sees something that is just, it's beyond flashy or colorful. It's something that no 8-year-old should want, but he's I am fascinated by this for no reason other than it's fascinating to me, right? And then, it's obviously something that's more expensive than, a candy bar. So, of course, mom and dad can't get it for him. And then he's like just mesmerized by this thing. And it's like, I don't know, a set of weights or something. Like, I don't know. But, right, that's a story. That's conveying a picture of an emotion, right? I like the idea, the story of Batman. That's my favorite superhero. It's my favorite story of all the comic book, all the Green Arrows, Green Lantern, Superman, Batman. Batman's been my favorite just because I love the emotion that is conveyed from all the brilliant writers, the just storytelling.
Who represents to you Bruce Wayne?
The cartoon.
Yeah, like who in reality have you met or seen that brings a Bruce Wayne-esque?
Well, no one. That's why I like Batman. It's because it's the whimsical kind of fantasy side of Batman, which I like, is that he's no real person. He's kind of this like ideal person. And that's kind of like, nobody who fights their villain over and over and over again, and they keep breaking out and keep breaking out and keep breaking out, would ever never just be like, okay, I'm done. I'm just gonna, this is not helping. You get the
but
chair.
But he can't say I'm done because he's Batman. It's who he is.
Right. So he's the best example of what someone could be.
Well, yeah,
right?
Superman's an alien. There aren't
Superman
very many.
is also a very
Wonder
good
Woman
example.
comes from
but
island
I think
under the
that
ocean, right?
Batman, what drives Batman is different than what drives Superman, right? I think that Superman is given these abilities, and he's always having to do the right thing. I mean, I look at like Spider-Man as like another great example of a great storytelling. Like the whole Uncle Ben story where he is selfish for once in his life, and then it costs him, and then, okay, this is why you're never
not going to be selfish.
It's never about you.
Yeah, it's always about helping out
someone else, right? There's this great moment in the Spider-Man PS4 video game that always makes me cry, and it's the moment where he has the antidote in one hand and it's one left, and Aunt May is dying, and he has to choose, make duplicates, cure everybody else on the planet, or Aunt May, and there's never a moment where he's like, I'm gonna do it, because it's just like he goes to it,
I want to do,
and then he's like, he can't.
Yeah.
So it's just moments, storytelling like that, these essences of the best of humanity, right?
Yeah.
If you were in that position, you would have, like, but that's the point of what superheroes represent, is these ideas of how we could be, how we should be, right? These made up stories. I just love, storytelling and things like that. So
I think we have to have those stories.
Yeah,
you absolutely
100%.
have to have them,
and that's why I'm never one to turn away like watching cartoons as a 26-year-old adult. Like, I watch cartoons.
We were watching
all the time.
anime yesterday with Teddy on the couch.
Yeah.
Well,
amazing,
isn't there
amazing.
there's like an entire sub theory on like the Pixar formula? Like there is an
it's
actual
Joseph Campbell. It's the hero's journey and
Pixar formula of the fact that these things make us cry by the end. I thought it was very interesting. We all went to the Walt Disney Family Museum yesterday in the Presidio in San Francisco, and you were talking about something that really stood out. And I would hope that at the last few minutes of this podcast, you could share about the 1 + 1 = 2, about the animating of the animal and what Walt would do in order to have people. Because I find, before you explain that, I find that the whole purpose behind Walt's use of animals, especially Mickey, was to break down barriers and get very complicated topics like Fred Rogers with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
King Fridays.
Would bring these very, very complicated issues to children to be able to emotionally process grief, to emotionally process the loss of a loved one or cancer or these things that they're going through. And so I know that Walt would take animals and have them use these cartoons and these stories and the hero's journey. And now we have Bluey and Bingo, where they're bringing these really complicated topics into the forefront so that people can
and I think
recognize
that
children
that's
are like
what
little
I
young
love.
adults.
Yeah.
That's what I love about storytelling in general, and that's what I hope to do one day with my own storytelling, is to sum things up in a way that makes it easy for someone else to understand. And that's just as simple as sitting down and thinking about hard questions with kids. How do you explain something like that? Well, you tell it in a very simple way.
Yeah.
That just...
And you have animals, which are make-believe,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
Make-believe.
Bambi
is trying to do
So
the
tell
us- so
tell
lessons.
us what
So, Mom asked me yesterday as we were going through the museum, Walt would have, for his animators, he would have a team of coordinators, animal coordinators, bring an animal in for them to study.
Yep.
Not so that they could replicate the movement. I mean, clearly they have to be able to see the muscle. If you look at a graph of a 3D animated animal, right, they put bones, they put muscle in there. So obviously they need to know how things move, but they were called to study the animals, and they had the live animal in studio so that they could know how not to make it look real. Because the reality of, if something looks real, you're never going to be able to draw a photorealistic horse in an animation and have it look real.
That's not the point of it.
That's not the point of it.
That's right.
Right. So what I was saying to Mom was the 1+1 is like they were basically given the real thing so that they could know, right, okay, if this horse is 1+1 equals 2, well then that gives us the tools to know how not to do this exactly. So now that we know what this is, we can do everything except that. We can do 2 + 3 = 5. We can do 1 - 1
Anything
is 0.
but 1 + 1 is 2.
Anything but 1+1.
Right.
Right. And so that is what their goal was, is to stay away from, because they had such a clear picture of what reality looked like.
Yeah.
Now we can...
Yeah, like an impressionist view.
Yeah, exactly.
Of
An impressionist
the animal.
isn't trying to do reality. They're just
No.
really bad at it.
No.
They're trying to do...
They're
trying to
applying,
avoid
they're
reality.
trying to
applying
avoid
shape
reality,
and they're
exactly.
applying
Yeah.
color, but they're doing it in a way that's kind of
I mean, that's what
antithesis of
Picasso
photorealism. Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Anything but reality.
Anything but reality. An
Yeah.
augmented reality, if you can pardon the pun.
And if you
based
can
on-
do anything but reality, and we know that Picasso was actually a very talented
He was
artist
an
and
incredible
was an
sketch
incredible
artist and
ability,
photorealistic painter.
painter. And if you can learn to do anything but reality, then you can take people to different places.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point of storytelling. That's the point of this podcast, is we want to be able to take people to different places. If we were able to say, okay, here's the box that we know everybody lives in, especially in the Silicon Valley. We live in this box, we pay this much,
it's
we
called a
drive this
cubicle.
car, we are these people, and we know what that looks like. So what can we do to pull away from that and be able to show and to be able to, that's why we're so glad that you were able to be on the show today, Jeffrey. Is like, we would love for people to be able to meet as many other 26-year-olds and 20-year-olds and 23-year-olds and just get a bigger picture, like a bigger
and
picture
to
what
just
things
recognize
are.
that being successful is about becoming indispensable to your employer, to your business, to your right. If I'm indispensable to you as a dad because I've given you so much and I've done a great job, right? Then that means that some facet of my personality or my point of view will be impacting you in a positive way,
Yeah.
right? And if we're going to be that kind of impactful like we can in our jobs, our businesses, then we need to have a point of view. There needs to be a position that we see the world from, that our art, whether people like the art that we create in our parenting or in the work that we do, if we can recognize that doubling down on our point of view is going to make the best art that we're capable of making, and then we just polish our skills and keep working at it, and we're going to come up with our Picasso point of view, that is the best thing we can do in the world, is to create art whether it's in parenting or at work or in the way that you've did the house, or even I woke up this morning, the first thing I saw on my Instagram feed was the pictures that you had posted. And I wanted to wake you up, and I didn't this morning.
Thank you.
But I wanted to wake
that.
you up and say, like, it was fabulous. It was a fabulous experience that you created in a portion of a day by coordinating the trip to the museum, parking, how to get there, directions, snacks on the way home, dinner, where we were going to eat, the tickets that needed to be purchased, the fact there was a backdoor museum around the corner that not everybody knew that has exhibits that change on the regular basis. They have dogs and cats right now. It was so well done. There was
a good one on there that I took a picture of.
We'll share the picture in the link on the YouTube if you want to see it. Which one? Do you know which one it was?
Which one was it?
You can, while he's searching.
You can talk.
Yeah,
you can talk to it, and then we'll post it. We'll post the picture that he's talking about. But
I think he was going to read it. Probably going to read a quote
it was
or something.
a quote.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
It was.
Yeah, and while he's looking for that, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I just, I really, you know how much I value experiences and aesthetics.
Yeah.
Your environment.
Yeah.
If we haven't said anything over the last 32 episodes or 33, whatever we're on, it's aesthetics and environment, and it's
working to control the environmental
experiences.
factors.
Oh my goodness! In 2 weeks, Madeline and I are going to be in Paris. And that's going to be an experience. It's going to be a high aesthetic. It's going to be a hit of adrenaline and dopamine. That's going to be something that is unmatched. And I do think that we're coming out of the pandemic still. We're still being affected by being at home and wanting to be at home. And really just, man, if there's anything that I can do to encourage experiences, go to the museums, go out, go places, pick a 30-mile radius and drop a pin. And even if it's Boringsville, there is a Boring, Oregon. And hey, shout out to Boring, Oregon. You're not that boring. But if it's a place that even on the map sounds like some place that you would never go, get out, do an experience.
Something
have an experience.
100%.
The guy that, the food guy that he does the weird foods. He travels the world, eats weird foods.
What's his name? Andrew?
No, not that guy.
Yes, he's a big guy. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Scott.
I have no idea.
No, Scott Zimmerman's your friend, but it is Zimmerman.
I do have a friend named Scott Zimmerman.
I think it's Zimmerman.
Shout
He
out
basically
to Scott
says
Zimmerman.
whenever you're traveling, like go into a convenience store, grab a bag of chips, so that you get to taste what the everyday people eat. Just like you get a better sense of the culture.
Yeah.
Like Japan has a myriad of
snacks
and things,
rice blown,
soy and rice, just
cakes,
like really interesting flavors and things, savory desserts and things like that. Just like crazy things. You get a really good sense of the culture when you go like buy a bag of chips or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Carissa brought back some really good candies when she was in Denmark.
Oh,
yes.
nice.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
the chocolate.
Yeah, the food stuff in there.
Love my friends who visit to Europe and bring back chocolate.
It's always good to have a family affair.
Mm-hmm.
This is a family affair. We're a family business, and it's great to have a chance to just talk, create an aspect of our life for posterity, to kind of capture this moment in time, because this will be live. It'll be on YouTube in another week, as soon as Andrew gets it done being edited. But I think it's important for us to capture little bits, little pieces, and to be with you. We get to see you. We get to see you today in person. It's so nice. You moving out to DC was a big growing thing for all of us, because we had to get used to not having you around. You had to get used to living on your own, paying bills. And I would say it's still not normal. It feels more normal having you home than having you not home. But, I think to have a kid that's on their own, living on their own and paying bills at 25, to me, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I think you're doing a
Great
great
job.
job.
On my own
Great job out there.
insurance.
Great
Yeah,
job.
on your own
Great
insurance,
job.
which costs me
I'm paying
nothing
a lot
different.
for
It's-
that, so
I wish I could keep
have
you.
to be able to talk.
I wish I could
talk about
keep you
that.
on mine because it doesn't make a difference to us.
Well,
but
Jeffrey, is there anything that is there anything that
Closing
you're
comments?
working on? Is there any closing comments as we close out the episode?
Trying to learn more about why I do the things that I do and how to get better at being. So the Enneagram talks about when you're in a healthy state, you gravitate towards certain types of practices, actions. Your motivations change. When you are in times of stress, your actions and your motivations change for why you do things,
Wow.
how you do things. And so when I am not in a conscious, just like healthy state, I tend to gravitate towards the things that are detrimental to my personality and just my own growth. And so just trying to figure out what are those things that are keeping me from being in a healthy state and trying to keep as much of that, as possible.
That's awesome.
Well,
So-
we're very proud of you.
Let
and
us know how we can help
you're doing-
aid you in
you're
your
doing
journey.
great.
If there's anything that we can do whatsoever.
That's right. Thanks for being with us, everybody. This is episode 33, 34,
34.
of the Jeff Heilman
Andrew's
Project.
back there saying 34.
a.k.a. the Jeffrey Heilman Project this
Yes.
week. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it today. And we'll put some links in the descriptions down below as to the photograph that you were going to talk about and maybe some of the links to the books that we put together. You can also text us. Jessica's got the number on that, which will be in the link. And tune in next week for another episode of the Jeff Heilman Project. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, everybody. Have an awesome week. Have an awesome week.
See you later. Bye-bye.